Hello, everyone. Thanks a lot for joining us today. We have with us Savita Reddy, who is the CEO of Inlingua Bangalore, for today. And before I start with any other questions, Savita, I would love to ask you: can you give a very brief about Inlingua? A very brief description about Inlingua, if someone doesn't know what Inlingua is.
All right. Hi, everyone. Thanks, Nikhil, for having me over. InLingua is a language training institution. So we teach spoken English, French, German, Spanish, and any other Indian and international languages.
Okay, fairly simple, fairly straightforward. So that's Inlingua, and as we continue, I would love to understand. Can you tell us the journey of how you started Inlingua, Bangalore?
Sure. I started InLingua in Bangalore in the year 2005. This has
Okay.
been about more than 15 years ago.
Wow.
Um, I have an MBA in finance and information systems, and I come from a business family. So
Okay.
immediately after MBA, when all my friends started working in other companies, mostly the
Hmm.
colleges which had just started around that time, I was looking for options on starting up because I'd made
Okay.
up my mind that yeah, sooner or later this is the route that I would like to follow. I was
Okay.
exploring, and that's when I came across the brand in Lingua, and I decided this is where I would like to be. And once I decided, there was no looking back, and I got into starting this. And we started with spoken English training, and then gradually evolved into other languages and language training organization.
So I want to understand this. Back in 2005, when obviously we of course did have the internet, but it was not that prevalent. How did you go about doing your market research? How did you decide that okay, this is an opportunity which I can pursue?
Good question. Yes, I mean, information available back then, very
Yeah.
limited information on the internet. It was
Yeah.
mostly, it was a proper physical brick and mortar store limited to the citizens of Bangalore. It was
Okay.
mostly through phone calls. I mean, we had those yellow pages, just dial and things like that. So I would have to
Mhm.
start calling them, finding out who are the other players in the market.
Okay.
And being a very niche and a small segment, not many were there. It was mostly individual trainers or a couple of
Okay.
institutes like the Vita, or maybe some Venkateshwara language training company, some this one. It's mostly through phone calls and network. I had a friend who was working as a teacher in one of the other institute. That's how I actually got the idea or the inspiration because she would share stories about it. So
Mhm.
that's how I started gathering information, finding out, or sometimes visiting locally, just going, visiting those centers
Mhm.
in person and gather the data from there.
Superb. Okay. And so how does it work after that? You're like, okay, I spot this opportunity. You start researching and you discover Inlingua. So what happens after that?
Yes, I mean, once I started researching, I realized there were no quality players in a place like Bangalore. And Bangalore
Mhm.
required people were looking for good quality English language training organization. Most of the other people were teaching straight grammar. And
Mhm.
as adults, switch off when it comes to straight grammar. And that's when I realized, yes, we need to do something about it. Then I
Mhm.
came across the brand in Lingua, and then I wrote to them, applied for it. It took about nearly 6 months to 1 year, 6 months only to collect all the data, feasibility study. And once I submitted all the data, I got the license to set it up in Bangalore. Then
Mhm.
I started off. After that, there was no looking. I started off with spoken English and training programs. Yeah.
Superb. So I want to understand this. Any business is just an idea till you get your first customer, right? So what was your journey to your first customer?
It was very exciting, very, I mean, adventurous kind of this thing.
So
Even though
what
it
all
was
did you do to try to get your first customer?
yes, first of all, I mean, the cash or finances was limited. Even if we had there were no marketing channels, even if I had marketing channels, I did not have any experience in this field. Forget about this field also as an entrepreneur or in the field of education or as a this thing. There was no experience that I came up with in the language field. Even to start up, I started in a very small way because funds were always this thing. Even though my family, I come from business family, nobody could believe that I wanted to start up without any experience. I manage on my own, pull in
Okay.
whatever savings I had, took up a very small place, and once the place was there, bring in a couple of my friends, ask them to join in, and I had to sit there in the reception, counseling the students. Then I was
Okay.
thinking, what do we do? And this brilliant idea of, okay, let me approach all the newspapers and see if they can write about us.
Okay.
And luckily, it's like they say, it's like where there is a will, there is a way. I
Mhm.
started writing articles about how I started up and things like that. Walked into all these newspapers, mostly Prajavani and Deccan Herald, and here in Bangalore, their offices, explained them that I'm doing something like this. I want to help people improve their confidence, improve their language. And this is how I started up. And this is how we are different from anyone else.
Okay.
Fortunately for me, all those people, wherever I walked in, readily agreed to write. And that's how we got our first customer. My phone started, I still remember there was an article in Prajavani in the back page in their Vanijya Udyama, which means the economics session, supplement of theirs. Says, do you want to learn English? Here is in lingua with a small picture of my phone started at 5:45 in the morning until
Okay.
night 11:30. It didn't stop ringing. I didn't have
Wow.
lunch, breakfast, or that day,
My
and
God.
also received calls from high-profile people all over, and that's how I started. And there was no looking back after that. It's like it sustained us for a couple of months, and that's how we got started.
Oh, that's absolutely amazing. I didn't realize that was that. So what you basically did was the early version of viral campaigns.
So, yeah.
I mean, adding on to this, I would like to understand this. So, right now, you get to see a lot more women taking the risk for starting entrepreneurship and all that. In 2005, what pushed you to do it? Because I really want to understand this, not just from the perspective of your side, but I am 100% sure there were a lot of hurdles which you had to take up, very small hurdles, which, well, someone like me will not have to face. I'm sure you've had to face. So, what pushed you in such an early age where, at least around 2005, you had very few women entrepreneurs. Now you have a lot more. But what pushed you to take that step?
Right. So, I mean, see, from a young age, I always wanted to do something, be different, not just be one among like others. And I
Hmm.
knew coming from a traditional South Indian family, it's like it's difficult to break free, especially when there were nobody else. Just forget about my mother or grandmother. It's like even my cousins, or if you look at any other extended family, even doing a graduation itself was like a big thing. Forget about
Hmm.
a master's. Nobody thought we would be able to do it. Somehow, I mean, the way I got into MBA was it's like my friends were writing the entrance exam, and since we didn't know what I didn't know what to do after the BBM, I thought let me also give it a try. So I just went and wrote the entrance exam and without preparing or any this thing. Luckily, I got through. None of my friends got through. Then I came home and then what happened is, okay, it's like take it up since you have got this thing. And we couldn't. I couldn't believe my this one because after graduation my marriage was planned, and then immediately
Oh,
after the marriage, the college started within 10 days or 15 days. So I didn't know whether I would be able to do it or not. I started off just because that was the only thing. After 15 days or 1 month, I found it very difficult. Then one day I didn't go to college. I stayed back at home. One phone call from my mother changed it. She said, if you're not going to college, then what will you do? Then I started thinking, yes, I didn't have anything else. I mean, I was just married. My husband was going to office and there was no kids or nothing much to take care. I said, okay, then let me get started and see for as long as I can, I will continue. So that's how that phone call changed. And I somehow passed, cleared. And so after MBA, then my daughter was born. I couldn't even
okay.
go to the graduation ceremony. And then my daughter was born. She was very small, and I would see all my friends saying, "Oh, I went for an interview. I got placed here. I got placed there." I would feel like it's like even I want to do that. I want to enjoy life like this. And how do I do it? And then I thought it's like maybe I should start something. If I start doing, then I can take care of my daughter, take care of home, and I'll also be able to do this. So that's
Okay.
how initially the idea came in saying, yes, I also want to do something. But going 9 to 6 outside was not an option because my father never went for a work, and my husband also had his own this thing. You going and working, they were like, we don't need your money. Why do you want to really go out and work? But I said, no, I want to do something. So if I am not allowed to go out and work, I'll start working here itself and do something.
Makes
And I would
sense.
spend time with my daughter. And once she goes to bed at 9 or 10 in the night, from 10 to the 12 or the 2 hours of golden time where I'd like sit, ideate, write business plans, figure out what needs to be done. Internet was quite very new, so I'd like keep on researching, trying to see. that's how I got started. And yeah, that will to do saying I need to do something. And
That's wow, that's pretty incredible. So during, I mean, after you were married and after you had your daughter, you started in Lingua. So that's absolutely inspiring. So yeah, I mean, by the way, I don't know, I don't know if I mentioned this, but I myself have been a student of Inlingua Jayanagar for Spanish once. Just out
wonderful.
of just I was like, let's just try to learn another language. So but yeah, I really thank you for starting it, because I honestly, when I was researching, I think this was back in 2010 or 11, I don't think I came across any company which was as organized or as simple as Inlingua was. So that's really good to know. Thanks a lot for starting it.
So much. I mean, really nice to know that you were in Lingua student. It feels nice, yeah, whenever you go out and say, oh, I've heard of in Lingua, or I've studied there, or I want to enroll for a class. Then you feel, yeah, those 15 years are maybe now it's like my entire life work has gone only into in Lingua. So it's
Wow. Okay.
doing this kind of work thing. Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about the business. So, like, how does the business exactly work? And more importantly, how have you managed during COVID time when so many businesses have got affected? So, how has it affected you?
Right. See, like we started with spoken English training. Then around 2009, we added French, German, and then slowly German and Spanish. We also work with a few corporates and colleges. So
Okay.
back, not just recently, but then from last 5 years, 10 years, somewhere. I mean, having the determination of yeah, I have to make it bigger, continue for a longer. What else can I do? What differently can I do? Were the questions which were always running in my mind, and somewhere I knew that the future is going to be online. So we had
Absolutely.
started, I mean, we never force, no, none of us knew about COVID, but then we knew that somewhere down the line, everything is going to be digital. And that's where we had to be there because brick and mortar can extend to customers only within Bangalore. But we sometimes used to get calls from outside Bangalore saying, where can I learn? Can you come here and teach? And so we were exploring. So we got into online training 3 years back. And we
Hmm.
got our first customer exactly 3 years back around July, August, and we were doing small numbers. And most we thought people from outside Bangalore would join our online classes, but things had changed so much in Bangalore that people are finding it so difficult to travel from Whitefield to Jayanagar. The traffic, the flyovers, the time to spend. I mean, God, people now it's become history after COVID, but then it was like a nightmare for me to travel from home to work itself was like difficult. So a lot of people from Bangalore started enrolling for our online classes, and that's how the model was built. The technology was invested in, and yes, and as soon as the COVID happened, it was like for us a dream come. I mean, in a nice way for the business. It was like go and tell the students, please come and do our online classes. It's like it forced all of us to all the entire
Wow.
team from home and all the students also to log in from online. The business shot up. I mean, we saw month on month the business started doubling, and then we had to immediately pull in all our resources, upgrade our technology, bring in those CRM changes in the CRM, and recruit a couple of more people. When people were trying to let go of their team, we were like recruiting more people and expanding outside Bangalore, which we always dreamt of, and was a little difficult because people would say, no, so I would still want to come to the center and learn a language. Now
Hmm.
everybody's we want to learn from home. We were like, go ahead, and we now have students from different cities, not just India, outside. So makes us feel happy, and COVID has helped us in many
Wow.
ways.
So yours is one of the few businesses, because you guys try to stay at the edge of technology. A situation like COVID has not just not affected you negatively, but actually has affected you positively.
Yes.
That's really good to know. So, can you just explain how the business works? I mean, what's the business model like for those of for our viewers who just like to understand?
All right. See, now that we have completely moved online, and we have also made a conscious decision that this is the future that we would like to be in. We
Hmm.
at one point in time had 3 centers in Bangalore. Now we have 2 centers, but then our offices are closed, and our entire business process systems, everything is we are making changes to accommodate only the online. So we
Hmm.
have a database of trainers who mostly work with us as consultants, not on full time or this one, and we give them a proper thorough training, and then we get a lot of students inquiring for either English, French, German, Spanish, sometimes Hindi, Sanskrit, Kannada. It's either Indian languages or foreign languages. We have both
Okay.
group classes as well as private classes. So
Okay.
all the group batches are announced on our website. The customer comes, purchases that course, makes a payment full in
Hmm.
advance, enrolls for a batch on our platform, and then there is a fixed batch start date. So 10 students or 15 students get started. We assign a trainer, and each batch goes on for about 60 hours. We have
Okay.
both weekday and weekend batches, so it goes on roughly for about 8 weeks or 2 months. And once they
Okay.
complete that level, the student can re-enroll or continue for the next level.
Okay.
So this
Okay.
is how we work.
Pretty interesting. Okay, so it's fairly simple for the customer. Then they just come online and can enroll into any one of your classes.
Right.
So I want to understand this. I on my phone I have this recently. I was checking it out, and this I actually this adds to my next question, which is what do you think is the biggest threat for Inlingua? I actually have this app which is called Duolingo. I don't know if you've heard of it. So I want to understand this right from a customer's perspective. From Duolingo, when I can get something for free, why should I pay an Inlingua?
Right.
What's the proposition which Inlingua gives me?
Right. Good question. See, there are two kinds of models in this, in any kind of training, especially in language training. One is an
Okay.
instructor live online training. That's
Okay.
where we specialize. We have live instructors who come, and it's a face-to-face class that happens with audio, video interaction, like the way it's happening right now. And it's as good as any classroom session. It's except that it's a virtual classroom instead of a physical classroom. Now,
Okay.
there are many apps like Duolingo and others who specialize in self-learning module. Meaning,
Okay.
there's a language which is already uploaded on the app. There is an absence of instructor. There are no instructors present. So you go
Okay.
download an app and then you start learning on your own. And what we have noticed is it's like after. I mean, initially everyone wants to get started. They go download for the first few days. It's like they're all excited, start learning. After a few days, the motivation sort of goes down because there is no instructor, there are no fellow trainers, students learning with you. And even though the app starts correcting your pronunciation and things like that, somewhere you still have questions. How does this work? Am I speaking correctly? With whom do I practice? So we have noticed sort of goes down. That's where the success rate is very high in a live classroom.
Oh, okay.
And for a passionate, serious learner who's going to a university abroad or who really wants to learn German language, French, I think app can get you started, but then it can't sustain you for a longer time. It's through a proper live classes that you can do that.
Okay.
So where we are segmented, and since it's a niche or this thing, we do not see any threat from the other apps. In fact, they get on the customers and then from there they start flowing into us. Right.
Oh, that's good. So, according to you, then what would be the biggest threat for Inlingua?
The biggest threat is see now everything has gone digital. Everyone, everywhere is present online. We had instructors working with us, and we had other local institutes with whom we would, some students would go there mainly for distance or cost wise and things like that. Now, since everybody is forced out there and everybody is there virtual in the virtual world, digital, this thing. So the other freelance trainers could be one of this one, or it could be other Inlingua centers or other language institute. Earlier, it was the competition was limited only within Bangalore. Institute in Delhi or Chennai or Mumbai couldn't come and take away our market, our students. But now, any student from any part of the world, forget only about India, it could be from South America, or New Zealand, or anywhere, can join or find anyone online and take it up. So since it's all opened up, I think the language institutions across the globe will all be competing at the same level. So that's one of this one major
Interesting.
threat. Yeah.
Okay. So you now instead of competing with another language institute in Bangalore, you're competing with another language institute in I don't know America, in Germany. Yeah.
In for German language, it's like if there is an institute in Germany, and we are competing with them.
Nice. So what are you doing to prepare for that? I mean, I'm sure that's something which keeps you awake at night. So what are you doing to prepare for that?
One is, see, like I said, since we are already into this space for the last 3 years, we have done our iterations, trial and error. We know what works, what doesn't work. We have a good pool of trainers. We have the technology with us. Now we are working on the marketing side of it. So we have that early age, the beginners, this one. Whereas most of the language training was still done in a brick and mortar, especially in the instructor-led training. This one, most of the other language institutes or trainers were doing it in a physical classroom, and not many are. I don't see anyone that I can recall who were ready to be there in the online space. So we were one of the first early movers in this space that we are already. So I think that should give us a complete edge because our technology is already tested and proven successful. Now it's only marketing which we are fine tuning. And once we go ahead and create our visibility, by the time the others catch up, we already have that gap of, we have an early good start to it. So I think that should keep going and there's no looking back. And it's the innovation year. I mean, once everybody gets onto the same platform, who innovates, who does it differently, who markets well and visibility and things like that, which I think is we should be able to manage because we have done it. It's like even when we started up, we had some innovative ways of starting it and then even sustaining it. And now I think the field is even more open and it's more flexible, more open, more creative, more innovative. So we are actually looking forward to this journey, more excited this time than what it was 15 years back.
Absolutely. I mean, I think now with the reach and scale, and because you guys have been tested, I think you can dominate. So let's move on to my next question. So let's go back a little bit when you were starting and when everything was going on. At what point? So of course, an entrepreneur starts a business. He starts getting his first few customers. He starts making revenue. At what point did you know, damn, I'm on to something big?
See, the first 3 years, 5 years was sort of still trying to understand the entire business model. How do we even exist? Is there a future? And things like that. It's not easy, especially for startups. It takes time. If you can be there for the first 3 years, 5 years, that's when yes, we can at least even sustain. Then once you're there for the 5, 6 years, 7 years, then now there's no looking back. We know we are here. Now what next? And that's where around, I think after completion of 5 years, we realized, yes, we sustained through this 5 years. We have managed well and we are growing. And suddenly it was like around 2010, after the 2008-9 recession, when things started opening up. That's when we started looking at it from a different angle and said, okay, what next? What do we do in the future? It's not just the next 5 years or 10 years. What do we do the future beyond that? And when we realized online is where it's picking up, things started, even in India, a lot of changes happening and the internet connections were getting better and better and people were moving there. We realized, yes, this is where we have to be sooner or later. And languages is something which is a very niche and unique. And at the same time, if there are 7 billion people on this planet, each one of them speaks some or the other language.
Absolutely.
And as per one of the studies, they say 1/3 of the population is actively looking at learning a second language, a new language. We realized, once we get there, I think there's no looking back. So I think after 5 years into the business, 6 years, we realized, yes, we have to sustain for another 5-10 years, get the model right. And once we are out there on the online virtual world, then there is no looking back. We can be a global player in this.
Wow. Okay. So I actually want to understand this now. So talking a little bit more about your business, Inlingua is a global organization, right? So, how would that work now? Because being Inlingua Bangalore, you're now competing with Inlingua Global. Is that how it is? Or can you just explain that to me? Because initially I thought it was a franchisee, but you mentioned it's not a franchisee. It's not your traditional franchisee. It's different. So how is it different exactly?
All right. Yes, Inlingua is a Switzerland-based brand. And what I've done, I've taken up the license for the city of Bangalore. What it means is I can use their brand and the material and the methodology that they've developed over the last 50 years. It's a 50-year-old brand.
Wow.
And we are a legally independent business enterprise. We are not like a franchise. It's a license setup to use their material and the methodology. So even today, all our books and the materials come from Switzerland.
Okay.
And we are free to offer whatever the local market requires here. Say, for example, the market in Bangalore is looking at more of Korean language training or maybe a little bit of Spanish plus some other skills training and things like. They don't limit us only to language. We are free to offer any kind of training. Wherever their materials are available for those languages, we are supposed to use that. And we are free to decide our own pricings. And the parent company doesn't have any say in the. They don't even know the kind of revenues or the numbers that we are doing and things like that. We buy their materials, methodology, use their brand name. So this is how we are different from others. We are as good as any other legal independent business.
And what about the online part? I mean, they do Inlingua Global doesn't offer anything online. You can independently offer it. How will that work exactly?
Yeah, there are Inlingua centers across the globe. And since most of them, Inlingua is a very old brand, 50-year-old brand, most of them are the traditional brick and mortar language schools. And now, with the changing times, yes, everyone is trying to go online. And since we had not seen Inlingua as a brand, had not seen this coming, everybody was continuing in the brick and mortar. This is a new change. We'd have to wait and see what the future is like. However, there is, I mean, one good thing about Inlingua is there are Inlingua centers in 300 plus Inlingua centers in 40 countries.
Okay.
And those centers are limited to those cities. It's not a countrywide license that they give.
Okay.
So wherever there is no Inlingua, like Mumbai, there is no Inlingua there, Mysore, or anywhere, say in any of the other countries, African countries, the Middle East, or China, there are Inlingua centers. These are called white areas, and the customers can approach any of the Inlingua centers. We can go ahead and maybe say we have students coming in from Mumbai joining us. Inlingua is no problem. There's no one objecting from there. Only if I go into Inlingua Germany, take their customers, then Inlingua Germany has an objection. So I feel the market is huge. I mean, in India itself, it's a huge market. And if you take it outside on the global scale, it's a huge market. And right now, I don't think anybody of us have to worry because it's a big pie and everyone has a share. Whoever is more innovative, more can go and get customers, will get it.
I'm pretty sure the fact that you're in Bangalore, I'm pretty sure the fact that you're in Bangalore, Inlingua Global is soon going to approach you. Hey, how did you do that? Or they already have. I mean, have they already approached you?
Right. I mean, like you rightly pointed, the access to technology and the people, and that's something which, I mean, a place like Bangalore offers. It's not easy for everyone. Yes, I mean, people have approached us from other Inlingua centers, the Middle East, and other people. And yes, some of them have started working with our tech people and marketing people, and they wanted connections. And yes, it's happening. Yeah. But fortunately, it's like being in Bangalore itself is like a big, this one. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. Great. So let's talk about something else. Now, as an entrepreneur, right? When you start something, you're alone, and it becomes a company when you make your first hire. So can you tell me how you went about making your first hire, and what are some of the things you've kept in mind when you've hired more and more people?
Yes, I mean, started off alone, but then the first hire, like I said, during those times, finding language trainers or in the finances was a constraint. It was mostly through the friend circle. So a couple of my friends from the degree, and then is what we started off. And it was nice. It's like just a very small team of about 3-4 women. And then when we got featured in all the newspaper, everyone was like, oh, women-led team, and people would come and say, oh, was it like consciously designed like this? We said, no, it just happened, and it was not decided. We were waiting, and then after 1 year, the first male trainer joined. He was like, come in, all of us one male trainer, and it broke that this one. But for the first few years, it sort of just happened that it was mostly women getting into it and doing it. And then slowly, it's like when more trainers started joining in, that's when we had to bring in some kind of a format and things like that. Slowly, it started being I mean, just a couple of us who could sit anywhere and have a discussion meeting. Now it's like we needed a room, we needed a place, time, and a lot of things started changing from there on.
Okay. So what would you say are some tips which any other business owner should keep in mind when they're hiring people? Because that's going to be the most critical thing, right? Like as you build out your company, one wrong hire can cost a lot indirectly, if not directly. So what would you say to anyone who's looking to build their dream?
Very true. It's like the people are the most important asset in any organization. And everything depends on for many of the startups. It's one of the challenges is the people challenges. It's like, so even, I mean, if you have your checklist, you do your interviews correctly and things like that, still things can go wrong. And many times it has gone wrong. So one advice that I would like to give everyone is as soon as you realize that something has gone wrong, immediately set it right. I mean, don't think about it. Don't waste time saying, okay, trying to figure out, understand. All of us are humans. Even after 15 years, even now, I make mistakes because that's how, I mean, we don't know. We don't have a 100% answer. If we were there, it's like none of us need to be even entrepreneurs. So we go ahead,
Absolutely.
get started, and sometimes we make mistakes. But as soon as you get to know, correct that. It's okay to let go. Keep your emotions outside, and whatever the business comes first. Because whether people are there or not, business will continue and business interests. We can still remain friends outside the business, but whatever business requires is what we need to take a decision. Be very quick enough to take that decision. Help them if you want. I will. Some of my people get placed in our competitors or other institutes or other thing. But when I realize they don't belong to our business or fit into this thing, I've taken decision and let them go and move on. No thinking, no this one. Quickly set right your any bad decisions that you have made.
Absolutely. I think that makes a lot of sense. I mean, when there is a mistake, don't wait a long time to fix it. Just get it done.
Done and not always go by the books or the systems or what has been already said. So most of the time the gut feeling, you feel something about, okay, this person or this is going to work, even though you may not bring in the relevant experience. Somewhere you talk to a person, we know it works, it doesn't work. Go by that gut feeling. Trust yourself. Trust that awareness or the knowledge that you have. That really worked for me.
I think you are in a unique position in that hiring language trainers, of course, would have been a challenge. I mean, I'm sure it even now is a challenge, right? Like you need someone who knows German and English. You need someone who knows, I mean, Sanskrit. You gave an example, Sanskrit and English. So I want to understand this when you're trying to hire for such niche roles, right? What are some resources to find people for these roles, and how do you end up hiring at such niche roles?
Yes, I mean, it's been a little bit of it was a challenge in the initial years. People would come interview me and go back because since I didn't know how to interview them, there were scenarios like that. Yes, I mean, even though we go by the certificate, their language and things like that. You know, checking if they're speaking the language correctly, the pronunciation is right, how fluent are they. Some of them would have learned their language long back, are they still using it, how up to date is it, and because it's not just knowing the language but then how you speak and train, impart the training. Initially, yes, it was a little bit when we did our first few ads, French or German or Spanish. So wherever we could go by, I mean, the first batch is always like a trial period. We would constantly keep taking feedbacks from the students. Immediately, if there was any such this thing, we had to change the trainers and things like that. We also took the help of friends or maybe from other in lingua centers, arranged for some telephonic interview to see if the language is right. And that's how we got started till we got the initial set. Once we had the initial set, then the others got nurtured. These people would help us in bringing on board the new set of trainers.
Oh, okay.
And
Nice.
sometimes
Okay.
to make them speak in a foreign language and listen to them, they think, okay, you understand because you are the CEO of a foreign language. This thing, you act as if you are, and you speak with confidence, and then take a call for letting them know. Even
Oh,
though,
wow.
like,
How many
and
people have you hired like that? I would love to know that. How many people have you hired like that?
I mean, people would assume even today, it's like, since I have been running this, I know all the languages. They come start speaking in the language. And then I would just sit back and listen to them and ask them questions in English. They continue in the foreign language. And it's like sometimes you allow them to talk and you get a gist of it. Okay, how confidently are they doing? Are they able to communicate? How are they doing? That also helps me make decisions.
So how many of your foreign language trainers have you hired like this, Savita? I would love to know.
Yeah, I mean, initially, I mean, whether I know the language or not, I would like initially make all of them talk in the language, with,
Okay. Nice.
and just to get an idea and the feel of this one. Sometimes there are other things which you can judge when a person is talking and things like that. So yeah.
Crazy. That's superb. So, okay, tell me this. How many languages do you know? I mean, considering you learn a language institute, how many languages do you know?
And this is one question which I try to avoid. But then, yeah, coming to it, yeah, I speak English and Kannada, Hindi, or Telugu, the Indian languages. Apart from it, English is the only other language. Even though I tried to learn Spanish or French, but then somehow couldn't get into learning the languages. For me, it's always the behind the the scenes. It's like trying to run this business, keeping it together, figuring out what next to do is what kept me busy. I mean, first it was my daughter was young, then my son was born. When I was into the business, somehow I had to manage multiple things. And maybe now that it's all online and I'm sitting at home, and I think I should be able to start learning a language, but then I don't speak any of the other languages, and somehow couldn't get started. And business is what I love doing, and
Hey,
I've been
I completely understand. I mean, I may not know Spanish, but I'll teach you Spanish through Inlingua.
yeah.
So I mean, as long as it gets the job done, right? Like it really doesn't matter. So let's move on to my next question. You told us about recruiting. Just explain to me this. Apart from your main trainers, right? What does your team look like? Who else do you hire? I mean, apart from your main trainers, what all do you need to make Inlingua running?
All right. See, first we have the sales and marketing team, the most important of any of the teams. It's like it starts with the marketing people. Earlier, the marketing was very different. Now it's all digital. So we have that digital marketing agency and the partners who try and help us generate leads, create that visibility for our brand. And the leads come into our system. And as soon as they land on our system or the CRM, it's a sales team, the inside sales team who takes it up. Right now, this team works from home. So we have language-wise categories. So all the French leads land in one person's account and they start talking to all those people. So sales and marketing. Then comes the operations team. Operations team is what holds the entire business together, announces the batch schedules, and then make sure all the payments are being collected. The students and the trainers come together on the same platform. The attendance is captured. Exams and certificates are delivered on time. Keeps the entire thing running. Apart from is the training team. We have a team of trainers, and then we have people who get into training them and coordinating with them. So we have this major four teams. Accounts is outsourced. So accounts and HR is sort of outsourced. So we do not have an internal team. They take care of it as an external partner.
That's actually a very interesting approach. So I rarely meet a lot of Indian entrepreneurs who outsource their accounts. So I would love to hear the story of that. Why did you decide to outsource it, and how has it been beneficial? What are some of the struggles which you end up facing?
Right. Initially, for the first couple of years, we didn't actually need an accounts because we could manage it, and the taxation then back then was very different, not unlike the GST and things like that. Then we had an accountant with us, a full-time accountant, and a business like us, it's like especially if everything is going on to a system or a CRM, we did not have a full-time role. But even then, yeah, we had a full-time accountant and an auditor who would regularly check and keep a track of it. But then when this accounts people who have been trained in our system change. This entire exercise of bringing in somebody, training them, getting them onboarded, again, if there is any change to that, because we didn't need senior or experienced people. The fresh category of people are with a limited 1 or 2 years of experience. Sometimes keep changing. They keep looking for opportunities, move out. That's when I realized, what are we doing? I mean, bringing in new accountants, training them when we have to focus on our core business. Why do we do this? And that's when I started talking to a few auditors, a few friends, and they told me that, I mean, there are many auditors who provide this service. And when I explored that, found a good accounting agency who could take care of it, there was no looking back. I mean, they have now given us a full-time accountant, but we don't have to train them, retain them. Even if there's any changes, they take care of it. And this worked perfectly well. That's when I realized, I mean, I think as a business, this one, instead of trying to do everything together, outsource as much as possible. Whether it's accounts or the HR or even the marketing, whatever is possible. Then you're left with even the technology is outsourced right now, marketing is outsourced. Then you're left with your core work, what needs to be done. You can give your 100% to it, figure out, keep scaling up.
Absolutely.
And that really helps.
Absolutely. Makes a lot of sense. I mean, why would you want to sit and get into other things and basically erode your core, right? Like you're not focusing on what really matters, you're focusing on everything else. Makes a lot of sense. I mean, I completely agree. So that's actually a very nice way of looking at that. So these are all the teams which go into Inlingua. So if I were to ask, apart from the trainers, I mean, what's the size of your team?
Apart from the trainers, it's like the size of the team is about 10 of us. It's a small team. But then what really helped us is at about 7-8 years back, we moved into a CRM called Salesforce.
Oh, okay. You've been using Salesforce for 7-8 years. That's incredible.
Yes, that's what helped us keep it a very lean team. Otherwise, who would have managed it. Like I said, no, a place like Bangalore, I mean, the technology is something which. So we got into Salesforce around 20 to 2013. And
Okay.
then that all the data was on the cloud. And it's not just for the lead management, right from the leads entering into our system, the entire batch creation process, the attendance reports, certificates, exams, all the data is out there. Any changes in system or when we have multiple centers or people working from home, it really helped. So this CRM or the technology is what helped us keep a lean team. Otherwise, we would have needed many more people to manage the same operations and lead. Now, most of the things is automated, right? From a lead on a Facebook, which directly goes into the CRM, and an email alert, which goes to them, and a student coming and making the payment on his own, enrolling into a batch, and the email alert again goes there. The student logs into the class on his own without any help, and completes the entire course, even takes the exams online, automated online, I mean, digital certificate goes to them. Entire end-to-end process can happen without any intervention manually. Very early stage, we realized we wanted to be system dependent than people dependent. And that really
Makes
helped.
sense. Makes a lot of sense. I mean, you don't want to spend time on doing clerical work. I can completely understand it, and I am just surprised you were using Salesforce so early. That's absolutely amazing, because even now I see, and it's so surprising to see. I see publicly traded companies who don't have a single CRM system. You're like, what are they doing? Like, their, their CRM is entirely on Tally and stuff like that. Like, that's not a CRM. That's an accounting software.
True.
Hello.
Language training, forget about language training, even the education. Salesforce is something which people don't get into. Somehow we got into, and then once we get in there, it's like there's no other way of doing. We had to just keep on building on it, and we couldn't, we just moved on with it.
That's
And that helped bring in other technology modules and marketing and made our work easier.
Absolutely. I mean, Salesforce is built such that you can plug in a lot of things. And even now, when digital marketing and all is jumping a lot, I mean, I'm sure you know exactly where your money is going. If you're spending something, you know it's going at the right place.
True,
So
very true.
I'm really impressed that you were using Salesforce for so long, because I have seen big companies not having simple CRM systems in place. And it's not like it's not available. I mean, you can take Salesforce, Zoho CRM, so many other.
True. You asked me one question about being a women entrepreneur. I think it's like we have to do things differently, because you can't just sit in the office full day, right, and manage all the things on your own.
Absolutely.
So
Yep.
that's where we have to do something
Oh,
differently
this
to
is
ensure you're still in the business at the same time managing your house. So these are the, I mean, some of the routes
great,
that
great,
we
great.
took,
I
which
mean,
really helped.
so so now that, I mean, I know you've done your investments in technology, I also want to understand this. uh, you mentioned that your technology is outsourced. So, I mean, any particular reason why you decided to go that route and not to build that skill in house? Because technology is an expensive thing. Even if you outsource it, it's expensive. Even if you build it in house, it's expensive.
Yeah, I mean, like any other businesses, we also had our own challenges. I
Mhm.
mean, we should have got into the online mode long back, but then we
Mhm.
faced, yeah, a lot of wrong people, wrong teams working on it. Then we had to change them. Luckily, it's like, I mean, after a few trial and error, this one, we found a very small team working out of Chennai from the last 3 years. They have been able to help us build a small LMS kind of this one. Initially, when we started off 3, 4 years back, we didn't know for a system like ours language, this thing, way to get started, and how do we adopt the already existing technologies, even though they were limited. In today, it's like there are a lot more online platforms that have come up, especially for delivering classes like this. So at that time, we had
Mhm.
to figure out on our own and then start building little by little, and that's how this tech team is helping us. And now we have reached a stage where we have completely customized, plugged it into our CRM or our other systems. Going forward, this could change. Yes, I mean, like you said, there are a lot more technology platforms available. Depending on how we scale up in the future and things like that, we might start looking at using a ready platform available.
Great. So, okay. Now, moving on to some questions related to your consumers, your customers. So, what was something interesting which you initially thought was, what would have been customer behavior, and what did you find actually being like? What was some interesting insight about Indian consumers?
Like when we started, it was we were known as a spoken English center, and a place like Bangalore also there were a lot of people, not just job seekers, homemakers, but a lot of this top CEOs or people from good background. I mean, even a couple of MLAs, ministers who had come to us to learn the language. So English was very much in demand. People wanting to improve their spoken English for various reasons. And we noticed that after 3 4 years 5 years Bangalore started changing a lot. There were a lot of new international schools coming in. Kids who were small kids, I mean, the parents start talking to them in English language, then their mother tongue. Yeah, I mean, there are many kids I see, it's like very fluent in English language, then they speak their mother tongue even now. It's like a lot of things changed. And today it's like we don't get anyone for English language in
Mm-hmm.
Bangalore. Or, it's from outside the say smaller towns and cities. So that changed a lot. Even though we started off, I mean, we were fortunate that we were immediately able to adopt, and as soon as there were we saw a dip in this market, immediately bring in French, German, Spanish. Today we do more of French, German, Spanish, Chinese, or Korean and Italian language, and English is sort of completely changed. And the kind of people we got for French also was very different. Schools were offering only French language. Now it's like other languages have started. And now I think it's like there are a lot of this students after their engineering going abroad for higher education, especially to Germany where higher education is free. So the markets keep changing. We have seen a lot of changes in it. That become our biggest market. And then most of the universities and the visa officials started asking for a certificate for to go out and join one of
Correct.
their universities. And that's where we started playing a big role. And then later came all these IT companies, mostly all these German-based companies, French. And now we are seeing the last 1 year, 2 years, Korean-based companies setting up their manufacturing space up here in Bangalore. The people working there would start coming to us. And after the recent governments, this thing with Japanese government, there are a lot of these people wanting to learn Japanese language, taking up jobs there. So we see a lot of change as per the economic, many changes in the outside world there. We keep seeing those changes. What really helped us is we not narrowing ourselves into any one particular language or segment, say it's only schools or colleges or corporates or individuals or job seekers. We are open, whether it's the younger school students, adults, or the working people. It's not just English language, it's all Indian languages and international languages as well. So we are very
Okay.
flexible to adapt to the changing needs. And if it's the university admissions, which are at a peak in some certain months, in other months, it's the school curriculum, students wanting help in their languages and things like that. So being that lean team with the help of our vast database of trainers that we accumulated and being very flexible and adapting to changes really helped us stay on top of it.
Absolutely. That's a very interesting answer. Okay. Okay. Now I wanted to ask you this. India is a cost sensitive market, right? And I am pretty sure I have come across a lot of players who are doing these things for cheaper and all that. But at the same time, I know for a fact, like if cost is not a concern, I end up in Indingwa. Like that was actually the research when even when I was doing it for Spanish and all that. I was the same thing. Like I was like, "ठीक है यार, if I'm gonna learn, I'll try to learn at the best place." So I want to understand this. How have you tried to make sure that cost is not a factor in the decision making, even if it is? I mean, how do you make sure that someone doesn't think that they're overpaying rather they're paying the right value? So how have you done that?
We had this challenge initially, especially for the English language. People would compare the costs, and there were all kinds of people charging different rates, and we had to somewhere. I mean, we couldn't reduce the fee to the other players. We had to stick to our this one, and the quality wise is what we differentiated ourselves. There were people who would come to us because our fee is high, and they would go and learn, I mean, join in other institutes. And we saw them coming back to us after 1 month or 2 months saying, I went enrolled for a course, I did not improve my English, I'm back here, can you help us? And then they're happy attending because the methodology and the materials, what's unique about Enlingua is the materials and the methodology that we use to train in any language. That sets us apart. It's a very strong, successful methodology. So, and it started spreading word of mouth. People started referring, and their friends started coming in and things like that. Later, when it came to foreign languages, German and French, and because people are a little more aware of the quality, and they made a conscious decision, yes, it's like the certificate is valid, we would like to learn from an international language organization. And so that's how qualitatively we differentiated ourselves, and through word of mouth and references and re-enrollments is what gave us a good, very good business.
That's good. That's good. So that just like any other country, I mean, India, even though they're cost sensitive, in the end of the day, quality matters.
Especially when it comes to education, no, it's like people do not want to anything with learning and training, even though however cost sensitive we are, we want to give the best to our ourselves or our family members, and they're something which people are ready to invest in education.
Okay. Now let's move on to some more questions related to the business. So on a day-to-day basis, right? Rather your role in the business. So on a day-to-day basis, apart from the revenue, what are some key numbers you look at? Like if those numbers, what are those metrics which you're like on a daily basis, you have to know them? What are like you have to keep a track of them?
All right. Yeah, I mean, on a daily basis, it's like it's the sales team and the marketing team, the leads and the conversions that are happening, the registrations and the students. Apart from it, we also track the number of batches, and that's happening, both the group classes and the private classes, and the different languages that we are offering, and the number of trainers, active trainers, and the database that we have. Apart from it, the technology, what progress are we making? It's like any, because it's like technology is our main focus area right now. And every time a class happens, when the users come back, give us feedback, we go back to the tech team, talk to them, try and revise, fine tune that technology so that it's not I mean, we give a nice user experience, not just initially, but then the entire process of for those 2 months with the exams, with the certificate, both for the trainer and the student. So that's something which I track on a day-to-day basis, the user experience and the technology.
Okay, okay. And what about this? I mean, how do you track your the feedback for your actual course?
Yes. So what we do is we do something. I mean, on the first day, we collect feedback. On the first week, we have something called as the first week feedback at the end of the first week, so that we can correct it then and there if there is something which is not going right. It could be with the books or the trainers or our staff or the platform that we use. Then we also have the mid-course feedback that
Okay.
a person goes inside the class. Now it's virtual. This thing takes the feedback from each of the student. Then we have the end of
Okay.
course feedback. We send out a form link and they fill it and send it back to us, and our team also talks to them constantly, takes the feedback and comes back, and then we discuss on it. It could be trainer related material, books, or the technology. The feedback is something which we love to take it, not just from the students, from the trainers, from the staff. Constantly, day in and day out, we are looking for that feedback. Even if they're not ready to, we are behind them saying, "Can you share something? How we can improve?" They say it's like everything is going good. Is there something that we can improve and change for the future? And then we take it seriously and we work on it. So
Nice. That's good to know. So, actually, so if you had to attribute something for your, as you mentioned, like references and all, where one of your main reasons. So, the feedback part is what has kept an edge for InLingua compared to anything else. Would
yes.
that be the right sentence?
Yes, I mean, this is something which has really helped because we take it seriously. We work on it and we ensure. I mean, I'm happy to say that, yes, we initially, for some time, when we were going through a little, I mean, not having good quality trainers, we had when we had people challenges, not having good people in the front desk to counsel, one or two challenges where customers would complain. But the last few years, I'm very happy to note that none of the customers have come back and said or complained seriously about us. And that makes it, it's like you look back and they say, it's like, yeah, there would be some slight feedbacks given, okay, I mean, this can be improved and things like that. But none of our students are unhappy about the course and things like that. So that's something which makes you happy. At the end of the day, that's what keeps you going and gives you the satisfaction. And I'm proud of it. And I'm happy that the team is doing that job, and happy to see that good customer feedback that comes. That's what keeps us going.
Absolutely. Makes a lot of sense. So, Okay, nice. Now I want to ask you some specific things about you as you're running your business. So, what does your daily routine look like, especially as a woman entrepreneur? I mean, what does your daily routine look like? Because uh, I know there's a lot of viewers out there who are women, and I know, once when they watch this video, I'm sure they're going to get inspired. So, how, like on a day-to-day basis, you're able to manage your day, give time to the business, give time to your family? How does it work?
Yes, I mean, see, if it's only business, sometimes it's like you go crazy. You need space to come out of it and think creatively, go back and do things there. So what I did
Okay.
is business is one part of my life. Apart from it, I'm a yoga instructor. I'm a classical dancer. I'm learning music and
Wow.
yeah, a little bit of a lot of things and blogging. I have my own blog and explore things. And now after the COVID, this thing cooking also has got into one of the main this one. Little bit of gardening, cooking, and but this is how you keep yourself sane in the. I mean, business. So it's like crazy. It's like if you're there, those numbers, the people, the work gets you into top of mind. You can't stop thinking. So you have to
Absolutely.
consciously break that thinking pattern, come out, recharge yourself, go back with a fresh thinking. So
Okay.
my morning starts around 6 o'clock. I wake up around 6, and then I teach yoga. I mean, earlier I
Okay.
was learning, and
Uh-huh.
then I did a yoga teachers training. Fortunately, luckily, just before the lockdown in Jan Feb. Now I'm a certified yoga instructor. I took 2 months off and went and did a full time yoga instructor course. Seven to eight,
Wow.
I teach yoga online. And then I go into the kitchen and the kids breakfast cooking and little bit of planning the entire day for the family. 8 to 10 is the time. 10 is when I first take my call first with the sales team, trying to figure out it's like how's their day, helping them and things like 10 to 1 back to calls and meetings. And then one is
Mhm.
when 1 o'clock is when I cut off and then come back again lunchtime with the family and then a little bit of relaxation and kids spending time. Evenings, I'm learning Bharatanatyam. So we
Mhm.
have classes once or twice a week. And then I'm also learning Carnatic vocal singing. So I have classes once or twice a week. And
Wow.
again,
Okay.
evening dinner with the family. And then once in a while, maybe some show. I'm not into newspapers or watching TV so much. But then once in a while, I try to catch up with some, maybe with the kids, a show on Netflix or a movie. And
Great. Maybe Business Bana can get into your schedule as well. Sure. So great. I mean, that's, and then you just wrap it up. So you wrap it up. I'm guessing
yeah,
you wrap it up fairly early because you have to wake up early the next day morning.
yes. Yeah, I mean, I've simplified my life as well. It's like only two cooked meals in a day, early lunch and early dinner. Morning, you start off with fruits and this one. Dinner has to be between 6 to 7 and not later than that. By 8, the
Mhm.
kitchen is all clean and done. 8 to 9 is the time to remind, talk to the kids, or maybe do practice some hobbies or writing or things like that. 9 is when lights off, latest between 9 to 10. And I'd like to, I mean, go to bed early and early to bed, early to rise makes a man healthy, wealthy, and wise. I want to be healthy. I want to be wealthy. I want to be wise. So I better follow
Makes
this.
sense. Makes sense. Makes sense.
Yes.
Okay. Now I want to know this. What is that one milestone you're chasing with Inlingua right now? Like, what is that number? If you hit, you'll be like, okay, now maybe the next milestone I can set a target. So, what is that you're chasing? Is it number of courses? Is it number of students? Is it the revenue? What are you chasing?
Good. This one, I mean, because for many years I didn't have a number. I just wanted to be there, established. But now, after the COVID, this thing, I certainly have a number now because we know it's like now the rest of the things are taken care of. It's like it's a single focus. Earlier, in a brick and mortar space, what used to happen is different centers, different teams. Not everything was coming together. Some students going there, here, corporate, college, online. It was like running 5 different businesses. Now everything has come together. It's a corporate or a college or a student from Bangalore or outside. Come to the same batch. Made
Okay.
our things easier and so we would like to. I mean, the next target that I have or the number that's on my mind is about 1,000 students learning every month on our this one. And then from there, going beyond that, across not just in India but outside India as well. if we can get students from different parts of the globe. And just for the 10, 12 languages that we are catering to now, 50 or 100 different languages that, 100, minimum at least 100 and above different languages that we would like to start offering training in. Right now, we have trainers for 50 plus languages, but on a constant basis, 10, 15 languages get offered. 100 different languages globally. And at one point in time, directly or indirectly, it's like we would like to touch the entire population based on the languages. Our vision is to enable everyone to speak fluently in the language of their choice, and help every individual to learn a second language. Our mission is to deliver the best quality training possible with the latest technology and the world-class trainers. And we would like to be a global marketplace, global market leaders, not just be there a leader in this space, touching everyone's life, all the 7 billion lives, directly or indirectly at some point in time, is
Absolutely.
the vision that we are working towards.
Wow. Okay. So my last question is this: what message would you like to give any woman entrepreneur who is starting off or trying to start off and is facing a struggle or facing some resistance?
Yes, I mean, see, it's we all have a limited number of years. We have one life to live, and we all have dreams. It's like whether we express it or not, deep down, all of us want to be something, want to do something, express ourselves, dream. So my single advice is go ahead, dream, not just dream. Once you know what you want to do it, go ahead and get started. Don't worry, don't give reasons. We are good at giving reasons and excuses, saying, no, I don't have money to start up, but my family is not allowing, I have kids, my health is not this thing. Stop giving reasons. Just go ahead, get started. Then you will find a way to do it. Your reasons will all go away. You will find a way to start doing it. And don't think about what the society thinks of you, what other people think of you. Like what matters at the end of the day. Stop thinking about worrying about what others tell you. Go ahead and get started, and don't worry about anything anywhere. Go behind your dream, do it, and you will see the difference. I mean, it makes you happy, plus you will be able to contribute to the same family people that who are talking about you.
And I mean, I just want to ask another question now. This, what you pointed out, that you also come from a business family and they would tell you that we don't need your money. What's a good response for that? I think a lot of what should someone respond to that?
I mean, yeah, you don't need the money, but there are a lot of people out there who need it. And people, I mean, sometimes you see it's like so many people, just for a small amount, they struggle, they work hard so much. Initially, even I was like thinking, what's the purpose of me doing all these things? Will it really help benefit anyone? Now, when I look back, when we see it's like we have given employment opportunity to so many trainers working from home. It's like otherwise having a full-time job for them. Most of our trainers are like women who have been to these countries, are allowed working part-time or working from home. Now, especially a lot more people working from home. When you can make a difference in their life, give them a job opportunity, and then give them an earning opportunity. It's not just working. It's like they take back home some money. And then when you can bring back that quality in the trainers and the students, and a lot of our students come to us, get jobs or opportunities or their promotions and things like that, you feel so happy, and you want to bring back all that money, invest in it, improve the entire experience for them, try and reach out to more and more people and make a difference there. If you can make those people a little more confident in their language, change their help them get a job or get promotions, it's not just that single individual who gets benefited, but their entire family gets the collective benefit of it. And knowing that you are making a change, making a difference, is what keeps me going. And this is what ultimately it brings down to. It's, I mean, at the end of the day, we all need very limited resources, especially now. It's like you are not going out or partying, or you don't
No travel, nothing.
No travel. You don't, even if you have extra money, it doesn't mean you eat extra food or anything. It's, you actually reduce everything, become more and more minimalistic. You take back this, whatever extra resources you have, give it back to the society, make a difference. That energy or that satisfaction is what makes your life. It's like now I'm happy when I look back. I'm really happy that I got started. It's like the same lessons I'm giving it to my daughter and my son. It's like they absorb me and they've learned a lot more than what they can learn in school. I also delegate some of my work to them, and they've learned how to start up a business and manage a little bit in whatever little ways. So the difference I'm making, it makes me happy that, and I found a purpose in my life, and no looking back, no regrets. I'm happy doing what I'm doing and happy sharing this with anyone who wants to. So that what keeps me going, and I'm happy that about it.
Great. Thank you so much for doing this, Savita. I am sure whoever is going to watch this interview has a lot to gain. I myself though, had a great time learning and understanding how you went about building your business. It was absolutely inspiring, especially the part where you have your schedule done so well, because my schedule is all over the place. And I really wonder sometimes that what am I doing, but knowing that okay, you can get there, it just you have to focus on that and put effort in making that schedule like that. So that was an incredible learning from me. So thanks a lot for doing this, Savita. uh, Guys, catch you in our next episode.